Fight IQ presented by RotoWire is back for a Thursday episode for a Friday card. It is UFC Utica. Welcome back, guys and girls. I'm your host, the Daily Fantasy Sniper. The main event for this card is Jimmie Rivera taking on Marlon Moraes, a fight where I really hate one of these two guys. We will get to that in a little bit. But the guy's here to give you all the analysis for this card. Back from his surgery at Real Chris Olsen. Chris, you feeling any better?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm hoping that the beating I took on last week's card didn't make me feel too much better, but I'm hoping that I'm back to full strength and hoping we can get another score in on this card. So.
I mean, did you listen to last week's episode? I was all about Tom Breeze. Joe had a few good picks. I mean,
I had Tom Breeze. I somehow trusted Eric Spicely, even though I told myself I wouldn't. So that's where that went. But
yeah, he burned me, and he burned me a little bit too in GPPs.
Yeah.
So that's one half of the panel. On the other side, we got Joe, who's also better known in Twitter and DraftKings as Sun Tzu. Joe, how is your Thursday night going?
Wow. Well, I'm still reeling a little bit from getting UK'd out of some serious DraftKings money on Saturday. I mean, right. I've been pretty vocal about it, but that in what hindsight is a horrible decision in Darren Till's favor was the difference between me losing $400 and winning over $5,000. I would have taken second place in the 1,060. That's 3,000 right there. And there was, again, 5,000 is probably conservative, but at least because I was up 5,000 going into that fight. So that was incredibly painful. I feel horrible about it. I watched the fight several times. I mean, I'm glad that at least the people who were ringside in the press grading it, like 90% of them saw it Thompson's way. I mean, it's water under the bridge. Thankfully, I was able to cash most of my cash game plays, which really cut down on my loss. So a $400 loss, while I'm not happy about it, it definitely, it could have been a lot worse.
Well, let's all regroup, and hopefully we have some good, I'm going to do air quotes here, discussions on this card, because I've gotten some of the feedback people seem to like when we argue. So let's see if we can find a few arguments on this card, one where there's not a ton of odds value, which is a shame because I'm going to mention it now. We didn't in our pre episode chat. Next time odds value comes up, we need to have a serious discussion about really how valuable it is, because there is, like in any DFS sport, bad chalk and good chalk. And Gina Mazzani was bad chalk. Eric Shelton was bad chalk. And these are some of the things that have really bitten me recently, but we don't have that situation on this card. What we do have is a fantastic, fantastic first fight. Jose Shorty Torres, 8,700. The newcomer is a favorite, taking on Jared Brooks, 7,500, who I think should have more hype because he should still be undefeated. He got close to what I would call robbed against Davison Figueiredo. He got Braziled, like Stephen Thompson got UK. It was that one was rough. And this is a matchup where Jared Brooks has the wrestling, but he is. Can see if I can make Joe laugh one more time. Is my analysis on Jared Brooks is if the UFC had a 115-pound men's division, he would be the champion of that Latin and Asian filled division. Like, it'd be full of Latin guys and Asian guys, and Jared Brooks would be the one white guy, and he'd probably be champion. Shorty Torres making his debut on short notice. Seems to get dropped every fight, but recovers right away. Jared Brooks has wrestling, isn't typically a hard hitter. This is a really interesting fight for me on DraftKings. You know what? We'll go with Chris. We'll welcome him back. You get the first crack this week on Fight IQ.
All right. So let's get the ball rolling here. Shorty Torres is a good boxer. He is a good combination boxer. He likes to go body head, which I appreciate. He hits very hard, as you said. But he likes to get himself in wars, which, as you also said, tends to get him hurt and dropped. The main thing here is I just don't think Jared Gordon is going to be there to get into a war. I think he's got great movement.
Jared Brooks.
Jared Brooks. I'm sorry. What did I say?
Jared Gordon kills this guy.
Talking about Flash Gordon.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay. Thank you very much. Well, Jared Brooks, as it were, I just don't think he's going to be there to be hit. I think he can move around, use his boxing. use his wrestling. I also think this is going to be the least athletic guy by far that Jared Brooks has fought in the UFC. Is just a plotter who's going to come forward. I think Brooks can pretty easily dance around and pick him off and use his wrestling to get some points. And I actually like him a lot as a dog here.
I also like Brooks as a dog, but when you talk about movement, my concern is he gasses. He has, for a small guy, not the best gas tank. Maybe it's he's working so hard for takedowns, but that would be my concern. Joe, where are you falling on our opening fight?
Look, I hate to make this this first fight the trifecta, but I think Brooks offers some great value on DK. I know that Torres is a hyped prospect. He does take a lot of damage in his fights. This is short notice. I think he can be a good fighter in the weight class in the UFC, but I like the wrestling and I like the movement of Brooks here. I think at 7.5K, he's viable in cash, viable in GPPs. I would probably not play Torres in cash. I would definitely have a few shares of Torres in GPPs, but I'm picking Brooks on Toutmaster.
Now we go to one of the more exciting fights in the card, which is interesting that the first two fights of the night are going to be really good, and then our Fight Pass prelim headliner is kind of a downer. But we'll get there because up first we have Nathaniel, the prospect Wood at 9,200, taking on Johnny. I'm going to call him Coach Johnny. Eduardo, 7,000, the Muay Thai coach down in Nova União, who's had a fall, got knocked out by Matthew Lopez last time out. When I was watching tape on Nathan Wood, dude gets hit a lot. These guys are going to stand and trade until someone falls. Not often you can say that about 135ers. I like both sides of this fight. I'm going to lean towards the younger guy for the pick'em, but this has GPP fight written all over it for me. What are your thoughts, Joe?
I'm going to lean towards the dog here at 7K. There's been a fair amount of Twitter on this Woods guy, and I watched a couple of his fights, and props to my Twitter buddies out there for pointing out some additional fights I should look at. Wood gets hit a lot. I am not a huge fan of Cage Warriors. We saw the Meatball who didn't roll last week, who was a Cage Warriors, champion, so to speak. I would like it if Eduardo had fought more than 3 times since May of 2014. That would be nice. And that, Novo União was not sort of a camp on the downward spiral. I looked at weigh-ins. I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch the face-offs, the actual weigh-ins. Eduardo looked pumped. I mean, he's looked as lively as I've ever seen him. I mean, he was like, and trust me, not even the people who live in Utica are hyped to be there. And he looked pretty hyped. So again, I like him. I'm going to lean towards him. I like the savings at 7K against a promotional newcomer coming from Cage Warriors, flying over the pond, going to Utica. I mean, he might not even be able to find anything to eat in Utica, Wood. So I'm going to definitely go with Eduardo here. I'm going to pick him in Toutmaster. I will have some shares of Wood in GPPs, but again, and this is my second dog in a row, I'm picking Eduardo.
I think we're going to be hurting for dogs, though, at the end of the day, especially in cash. We kind of started off with a couple. I think we'll start getting to some slim pickings. Chris, are you also on the dog?
I'm also on the dog. I think this is a fight where you need exposure to both because I think either guy can get a knockout here. But if I had to say which is more likely, I'd say it's more likely that Eduardo gets it done. As Joe said, I mean, Nathaniel Wood, not only does he get hit a lot, I mean, he almost got finished in the fight before his last one. He almost got finished. Had to come back with like a miracle left hook off the cage to drop his opponent. And I mean, if you're looking for that against a guy like Eduardo, who's been there before, who's going to get patient and not overextend when he has you hurt, I just don't love it. I mean, I think Nathaniel Wood, he's got some good leg kicks too, but I don't know if you want to get in a leg kicking war with Johnny Eduardo. I also think that, Eduardo's slick on the counter. We saw that in the Manny Gamborian fight. And I really think that Wood tends to lunge into his right hand a lot, which can leave the counter open. And I really wouldn't be surprised if he puts Wood down with something like a counter hook here.
It is worth noting that Eduardo's getting up there in age, was knocked out in his last fight. You have to be a little worried about the chin, which as we move forward is really going to be a theme on this card. There are some questionable chins.
But wasn't that, Sean, the first time he's been knocked out in his entire career?
Was it the first?
I think so.
So, yes. That's why Mario Yamasaki gave him a chance to be a warrior, if you guys remember that. It was
No. He said that about
No, I know. That's my little joke to tie it back in.
It might have been his first knockout. I know Aljamain Sterling submitted him. They brought it up really quick. But
yep.
So it's also 135. So it's usually not a ton of knockouts. That's why it's interesting this fight. It's probably going to end in that one way or the other. Moving on to our surprising Fight Pass prelim headliner. We have Jessica Aguilar at 8,300 taking on Jodie Esquibel, 7,900 Aguilar. I said this on another podcast. It's worth taking a pause here. She has 25 professional women's MMA fights. You don't come across that a ton. She's been around a long time. I think she is MMA old, kind of one-dimensional, and while Esquibel isn't a future top 15 contender, I think Aguilar's just on her way out. I did see her at weigh, and she looked incredibly old. I think Esquibel does enough to stop the Aguilar takedowns and wins a striking battle on the feet, a close fight for DraftKings. I'm not really interested in this fight. I've toyed with the idea of just fading it altogether everywhere. Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, that wouldn't be the worst play in the world. It's funny, these fights, they kind of remind me of each other. They really sort of tend to pull their punches when they strike. I mean, Aguilar, I guess, likes the right hand. Esquibel likes the hook. They both wrestle a little bit. My thought on this is that Aguilar should be able to pressure enough and look for the takedowns enough to sort of smother Esquibel and shut her down. But as far as point scoring, I mean, I think Aguilar could get in a situation where she gets a few takedowns and scores some points. And we know that she's tough enough where, she's not going to quit on the fight. But, I think that other than maybe, a poke here or there, I think a fate of this fight isn't the worst idea in the world at all.
Joe, how are you handicapping Aguilar Esquibel?
Well, look, I both of these fighters are at good camps. I mean, you've got Aguilar at ATT, you've got Esquibel at Jackson Wink. So they're both at good camps. They both have good training partners. Just to follow up on Chris's point, I don't love this fight. I will have a few shares of Aguilar for the takedowns. I think she's fought way better competition. Again, at one time, she was a real hyped prospect. And then I believe she got injured. She was inactive for a long period of time. Esquibel was gritty against Carolina, against KK. But again, KK is not really a finisher. So yeah, she lost all 3 rounds clearly. She didn't look the worst. I honestly think she's going to be fairly popular. Esquibel, I don't really like her a lot. My pick is going to be Aguilar. I'll have a few shares of her. I'll have fewer shares of Esquibel.
And off of that super stellar fight, I'm going to try and wake everyone back up by letting you know you can go to rotowire.com/free, get 10 days free premium content, stuff that's usually behind their paywall, all free, no credit card required, all kinds of optimizers, articles, picks, cheat sheets, stats for all your season-long and daily fantasy sports. Again, this podcast presented by RotoWire. Want to thank all of them. The quick plugs for us, make sure and just follow all of us on Twitter. You can follow everything else we're doing there. It is at Real Chris Olsen, at Sun Tzu, and at the DFS Sniper with 1 S. And now we move on to, I think, probably the chinniest fighter on the card, Gleison Tibau, 7,200, taking on Desmond Green, 9,000. Gleison Tibau was put out cold by a innocent-looking shot last time out by Islam Makhachev, whereas last time out for Desmond Green, he fought a guy 2 weight classes bigger than him and grappled with him. And Michel Prazeres is a good grappler. Desmond Green really impressed me in that last fight, even though I had bet on Michel Prazeres. This comes down to, though, Tibau's chin. Is it totally gone? I think it is, so I'm going to have shares of Green. However, if it's not gone, if it can be a gritty type of fight, Gleison Tibau is a high-level BJJ black belt, and I don't think Green wants to be standing, or in the clinch with him, or doing any kind of prolonged grappling and scrambles. That's when bad stuff can happen. I think Green has the advantage in the feet. I think Tibau's chin is gone. I think Green makes for a pretty strong GPP play, and I don't think I can mess with Gleison Tibau off his Mexican vitamins. Joe?
Yeah, I will have shares of Green. I just don't. I mean, there's enough cloud on Tibau where I don't know how I feel about playing Green in cash. I definitely like him as, in GPPs. If Tibau's gone, he's gone. To your point, if he gets into a grappling exchange, it could be an ugly type of fight. I'm just not super confident that it's not going to go in that direction, which is why I'm not sure about Green in cash. But I do like him in GPPs. I think he's probably got a higher ceiling than he does a floor, if that makes sense. So I'll pick Green. I'll pick him in Toutmaster. I'll play a few shares of him in GPP. I don't know that I'm going to have a lot of Tibau, but that's how I see this fight.
Chris, you going to invest in Gleison Tibau?
I don't know how heavily I'll invest. The first thing I thought about this fight was, okay, I don't know if Desmond Green is worth the money because, his basic fighting style is to wait and try to draw out counters and then he'll hit you on the counter. But then I watched the Islam Makhachev fight with Gleison Tibau, and that shot came off of a countered low kick that just sent Tibau down to the canvas. Now, as far as a Gan chin goes, I always like to let guys, get wiped out by one shot, even if it's innocuous, at least once before I call the chin into question, because anybody can get hit a little weird, But I do wonder what the wrestling exchanges in this fight will look like. We've seen, as you alluded to, Sean, how crazy strong Desmond Green can be in the grappling in that fight with Michel Prazeres. He was doing something very weird in that fight, which I think he was trying to get himself hit in the back of the head so they would get stood up. It was very strange, but he at certain points he just looked like he stopped fighting. But I don't know, that was a whole weird situation, and I guess I won't hold that against him. Point is, as I bring this back, I think Desmond Green fights a little too slowly for me to pay up for him in a lot of different spots. I think people are going to be way off Gleison Tibau because he got knocked out in his last fight, plus the layoff before that. So I think I'll have a decent amount of Tibau in this fight, and maybe a splash or two of Green, but I can't see myself investing too heavily.
Right, now we move on to Belal. Remember the name Muhammad taking on, he's at 9,400, taking on Chance Black Eagle Rencountre at 6,800. Whoever that was in the background, apologize. I'm going to blame Chris, my guess.
Nope.
No? Joe.
Wasn't me.
What was that?
I didn't hear anything.
Did anybody else hear that? Something is going crazy in my headphones, so.
I don't know.
All right. That was an odd pause to this episode. Sorry, guys. Belal Muhammad at 9,400 taking on Chance Rencountre at 6,800. It is Ramadan, and that is actually useful information in this fight because Belal Muhammad cannot eat during the day.
Or drink.
Or drink. I don't think that matters here. Chase Rencountre taking this fight on short notice. He's just not UFC caliber. He's not the worst person you're going to see, but he's just not getting. And I know what people are going to say, Joe, that Belal Muhammad is not a finisher. But he's going in there and he's having fights with Jordan Mean, Tim Means, Matt Brown. He did finish. I think it was Augusto Montano. I think.
Yes.
So he has a UFC finish. I get that he's not a big finisher. This is the Black Eagle here. Like, I think he's minus 400. For me, I'm probably going to play him in cash games because he is so safe. And if he only scores 80 to 85 points, it's safe enough for me for cash games, especially with some of the other fights up in that range that we're going to get to. I mean, you could pay for Belal Muhammad or Walt. Who's really safer? I'm going to take the points in cash for Belal Muhammad. Anything goes up in that range for GPP. But for me, this is just a short notice replacement. I think is going to get beat up, and hopefully he doesn't Alex Hernandez me. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's where I'm leaning with this one. Chris, you're up for this fight.
Yeah, I don't think it's implausible that Belal covers himself here, just because I think Rencountre, as you said, he doesn't seem UFC caliber. He doesn't seem to have a game that's really put together. He likes to either stay at range and try to counter with do the long guy counter with the uppercut, or he'll try to leap in with a 1-2 that's very predictable and has gotten him countered in the past. What I liked especially about Belal Muhammad in his last fight against Tim Means is I think his boxing is getting better every fight. I think his combination punching is getting better every fight. The way he gets in and out after combinations, the way he can roll and strike. Also, we've seen Rencountre, he sticks his leg right out there, and that was a big source of points for Belal in the Randy Brown fight, was just to kick that leg and use his wrestling. And I think he can do a similar thing here. As you said, Joe, and I think we would pretty much all agree on this, is that he's at least safe. I don't think there's much of a chance that Rencountre is going to knock him out, even though, we have seen Belal knocked out on counter before, but I think he's better now. I think
that was Vicente Luque.
That's right. Well, yeah, I'm not comparing the fighters. I'm just saying, he tends to bring his feet with him a lot more now when he strikes, as opposed to just, standing and winging as he did in that fight. So yeah, he's safe, and I'm not gonna totally discount playing him in GPPs for the salary. But one thing I am sure of is I'm not gonna have that much Rencountre.
Joe, are you loading up on the newcomer?
No, look.
Here's got you into it.
Here's the issue I have. At 9.4K, I don't see how I could get him and Gigi and Gillespie in my lineup at the same time. And
you can do it. I built a few.
I can't, not with the dogs that I like. So that's the issue. I'd rather pay up 100, for Gigi in this fight. And again, what's Harris at right now? Is he 9.2 or 9.1? What is Harris at?
Walt Harris is 9.3.
Okay, so he's only $100 less. I would agree that if you have the money, I would probably, for cash, rather pay up for Muhammad. I would prefer Harris in GPPs. Again, it's just purely a function of I like GG more, paying $100, and in the builds that I've done so far, I really don't like anything that I have with those two guys on top. So that's my big issue. I'd like Muhammad to win. He potentially could even get a finish. But if it goes to decision, I don't know that he's going to earn his salary. And you know me, I'm a 10X guy. Look for 10X.
Moving on to David Teymur at 9,100, taking on Nick the Carney Lentz at 7,100. My aside for this that I'm pretty sure Joe knows. I don't think Chris is aware. So a few weeks ago when I had to miss, when I was in Disney World, we had Kyle Steele on from Loudmouth MMA, and we do another podcast earlier in the week. I think everybody should know that Nick Lentz may be Kyle's favorite person. He loves him. He is his biggest fan. And if you were to tweet him at Loudmouth MMA that he loves Nick Lentz, you'll get some comical reactions. I'm not going to do him completely like that. He hates Nick Lentz with a burning hot passion. And I think if you're watching, you probably should tweet him and ask him how much money he's betting on Nick Lentz, because it's funny. Nick Lentz is not good. He finds ways to win fights. He has 12 UFC wins, which is stunning to me. He is a little UFC old, but he wins via guillotine. In some matchups, he can use his wrestling. Teymur really impressed me in the Drakkar close fight with his poise, stuck to his game plan, wouldn't get drawn out into war with a close technical striker. I think Teymur's pretty safe at 9,100. This is where, like Joe did for the last fight, I'm more worried about Teymur scoring than I am Belal Muhammad, because Teymur's going to sit back and use his technical kickboxing, and Lentz is tough. I don't think he's going to finish him. I'm worried about how much Teymur will score. That being said, I want none of Nick Lentz. Joe, so how much are you going to invest in Kyle Steele's favorite person?
a few share. Look, I honestly have not done a lot of lineup builds yet, and I know I'm going to need to because of the quick turn time. I'm used to having Friday and part of Saturday to do my lineup, so I'm going to really have to step it up because I do have a day job and I do have to work tomorrow. I will have a few shares of Lentz in GPPs just because, again, it's not completely inconceivable that he could grab hold of something if he gets it to the ground. We saw him do it against Will Brooks. I think the more likely outcome is he gets pasted up by Teymur on his feet. Although, if Teymur is really takedown adverse, I could definitely see your scenario where he doesn't score a lot because he doesn't go inside enough because he's afraid of the takedown. I can definitely see Teymur winning a decision here. I don't like him in cash. If he, I do like this as a GPP fight. I don't like either side in cash, but I think you should have some exposure to both sides in GPPs.
Chris, how are you approaching Nick Lentz, David Teymur?
Well, I actually had a decent amount of Nick Lentz in that Will Brooks fight, but that was because we'd seen Will Brooks struggle with grapplers, and it was decent. I actually think taking Lentz here is sort of lighting money on fire. I just don't see. We've just seen Teymur be too good at scrambling back to his feet, at keeping distance. He's just so good at keeping range. Just a classically trained striker. And I echo everybody's sentiments though about the scoring. I think we've seen him just lay back, body kick, and he generally only gets finishes when they present themselves on a counter. But Nick Lentz might present that counter because he does sort of have like a solid meat and potatoes aggressive boxing game that he tries to use, and that was getting him countered really heavily by Will Brooks before Guillotine-ageddon over there. But I don't know. I don't think that Teymur is as sharp on his counter. I know he looks to counter, but I think oftentimes what he just ends up doing is circling out on the fence and coming back to center. So if we're going to have a fight that's a lot of that, a lot of reestablishing center and single strikes being thrown, I would like Teymur more because I think Nick Lentz is going to give him openings, and I don't think Nick Lentz is going to get this fight to the ground. But, yeah, this is going to be largely a pass for me. And if you had to play it, I would say Teymur and avoid Nick Lentz like the plague.
This is another fight that I think I'm dog or pass, and it's really interesting because we have such an unknown here. And then an unknown is Sijara Eubanks at 8,400, taking on Lauren Murphy at 7,800. I see a lot of people confident in Sijara Eubanks. Guys, she's a 3-2 fighter making her UFC debut, who has a tough time making 125. She made it. I wonder what that does to her gas tank. And say what you want about Lauren Murphy. She's tough and she's gritty, and she's gonna test Sijara. I think this fight goes late. Like, Lauren Murphy went 3 hard rounds with Liz Carmouche. She went 3 rounds with Caitlin Chukagi, and she's got a win over Barb Honchak, who I get was 1,000 years old, but she wasn't preparing for it. Took that fight on short notice. She went 3 rounds with Sarah McMahon. Like, the quality of competition, this is clearly in Lauren Murphy's favor. That being said, Sijara is younger, clearly more explosive, BJJ black belt, where power striker, where I think Murphy would have the advantage is really, I almost think in the clinch, just tiring out Eubanks, making her clinch early. And that's kind of how I see this fight playing out. These two also had a lot of animosity in the tough house that they were in together. I personally have a hard time trusting a 3-2 fighter making their UFC debut who I think has cardio issues. She's probably a little better, but those things make me lean towards picking Lauren Murphy straight up. It's not a very confident pick. Can you talk me back on the ledge? Who's up? We'll go, Chris.
Yeah. Well, when this fight first got announced, because I liked Sijara Eubanks coming off the show. I thought she was the best one in the house, and I was anxious to see her fight again. But then intermittently, she had a fight against JJ Aldridge and in Invicta, and Aldridge just applied pressure, a pressure boxing game, and Eubanks just wilted. She couldn't get anything off. She looked frustrated. She was eating strikes the entire fight. And Lauren Murphy's going to do that. I mean, Lauren Murphy, it's funny. She sort of has the Chase Sherman thing going on where she does a lot of good feints and fakes and everything looks great. And then when she starts to throw, she doesn't move her head. So that's why she gets tagged up so much. But I just wonder if a pressure game by itself will be enough to shut down and frustrate Eubanks as Aldridge did. Now, Lauren Murphy isn't going to be as agile. She's not going to have as good footwork. So maybe there's something to be said for that if she's going to stand right in front of her. But I am worried about how Eubanks is going to react to the pressure that Lauren Murphy's going to keep. I think that if she can get this to the ground, that is Eubanks, she's going to probably have her way. But the only people we've seen taking down Lauren Murphy are really good wrestlers, and we don't know that that's Sijara Eubanks yet. In fact, I would venture to guess that it probably isn't. So I'm kind of having a hard time with this because I think that Eubanks has one very clear path to victory, and that's on the ground. But I wonder what happens if is Eubanks just going to melt under that pressure? And for that reason, I think maybe I'll give a slight lean to Lauren Murphy, but this is a closer fight than I was expecting.
I think you're on the same page as me. Let's see if I'm pretty sure Joe, who is the women's MMA whisperer, is going to kind of sway us back onto Sijara here.
Yeah, I like Sijara Eubanks quite a lot here. And let's talk a few narratives. One, to correct Chris, it was not JJ Aldridge who she lost to. It was Aspen Ladd. That is a huge difference. And it was a decision.
The technique was the same.
But Aspen Ladd could not finish her. Right. And Aspen Ladd I think she's top 10 now. Aspen Ladd. I'm very high on Aspen Ladd. I mean, she looks like she should be getting ready for cotillion, and she lists gardening as a hobby, but I like her. I think she's top 10 now, Aspen Ladd. Okay, so let's get away from that. The animosity between Murphy and Sijara Eubanks was Sijara Eubanks was trying to cut weight, and Lauren Murphy was wanting that fight if she couldn't make weight, so she tried to actually get into the sauna at the same time, which I thought was friggin' hilarious and pretty bold by Lauren Murphy. For this camp, Sijara Eubanks spent a good portion of it at the UFC Performance Center, working with a nutritionist. So her weight cut, from what I hear, was not as difficult as it has been in the past. She actually looked pretty good at the weigh-ins. I have never been a huge Lauren Murphy fan. I like Sijara Eubanks is a high-level black belt. I actually like her to get the finish, and I don't think she's going to be super highly owned because a lot of guys, when they see a lot of players, when they see what they believe to be mid-level women's fighters, they fade the fight. So I like Sijara Eubanks a fair amount here.
Moving on, we have Sam Alvey at 8,500. Smiling Sam takes on Gian. I'm going to call him Big Dum Dum Villante at 7,700. And I say that because Gian Villante's fight IQ, it's exactly that. And I'm from Long Island, so is Gian Villante. I think he is a stereotypical Long Islander in some of the worst ways. We have the game plan to beating Sam Alvey. Is he going to do it? I don't think he'll do it for 3 rounds. I think he's going to get, at some point get frustrated that he's not exchanging. Sam Alvey can be leg kicked. John could do that for 3 rounds, and that would be a perfectly viable path to victory. I just don't see him doing it. I think he's going to engage in a firefight, and that's when Sam Alvey is going to knock him unconscious. I don't know how long it's going to take. It could be 3 minutes into the fight. It could be 3 minutes into the final round. I'm picking Sam Alvey here because I can't take Gian Villante. I'll take the counter striker against him. Not a confident pick as well because they also could end up just staring at each other. Like a lot of the Villante-Barroso fight was staring at each other. So I'll take Sam Alvey, but it's not with any big degree of confidence. Joe?
Well, I guess the good news is that Sam Alvey very rarely taxes his opponent's gas tank. And, in addition to having low fight IQ, Villante's gas tank isn't the best. I think, there is a game plan here. As you said, it would be a huge mistake if he tried to walk Sam Alvey down. He needs to make Sam Alvey come to him. If that happens, this could be one hell of a boring fight. Sam Alvey fights are typically not that exciting in the first place. I think for the first time since Crocs were cool, he broke 100 points in his last fight, Sam Alvey, and no one really expected it. I think he scored an insane amount of points. I want to say like 120 or something like that. He scored a lot of points in his last fight, and he is a counterpuncher. He's a known counterpuncher. So Villante tries to walk him down, walks into him. I could see Sam getting the finish. If he tries to just dance around, I could see a very boring, low-scoring fight that ends in a decision one way or the other. So my pick is Alvey. If we can rely on Villante's poor fight IQ, I like Alvey by finish. If overnight his IQ increases and he fights a smarter fight, I could see this being a very boring, low-scoring, split decision type of fight.
Sam Alvey has scored over 90 points 2 other times in his UFC career outside of his last fight against Pacino. He also scored, I had to pull it up because it made me laugh, 94 points against Eric Spicely in a submission win where he hit a 10-finger guillotine. A 10-finger guillotine. It was a weird one. And then he scored 123 points when he plastered Kevin the King Casey. So take that for what it's worth. How you feeling about this fight, Chris?
This fight is going to answer a very interesting question for me, and that is, how much do you have to give a fight away before Sam Alvey will actually take it from you? The Marcin Prachnio fight, we literally saw rock bottom, where a guy just lowered his hands and walked forward. And Sam Alvey said, okay, counter, knock you out. And I will say that when Sam decides to throw those counters once every, 15 fights, they are accurate and they do come fast. But we're going to have to see when he's comfortable to throw them. John Villante is a very rote fighter. He comes forward, he throws overhand rights. That's what he does. If his corner yells at him long enough, maybe he'll throw a jab or two. But otherwise, he's just going to throw overhand rights, and he's going to try to get his opponent out of there with overhand rights. Alvey should be able to time it and time a counter if that's what he wants to do. But it depends. Like, is Alvey just going to melt because somebody's throwing something at him? Does the guy need to have his hands down and be walking forward? Or can he say, okay, I have your timing now. Vinc, here's the counter. I'm going to say that is going to happen, even though I hate relying on Sam Alvey. I'm going to say Alvey gets a finish here. I'm going to say that there was a method to his madness because I believe he called this fight out. So I'm going to say that he's not just a fun-loving, kooky guy. He's actually looking for fights where he can, have fun. So maybe he's like an evil genius here. But I'm going to go with Alvey for a knockout. And if it doesn't happen, it's going to be a very boring fight. But I think I like Sam to win it either way.
Yeah, Alvey, I think he thinks that Villante is going to come forward, which is what should happen. And Villante should just leg kick him and take a decision win. At 7,700, Villante, I don't think I'm going to fade him in GPP just because it's a 205-pound fight. So we'll see what happens. But one of the dogs I am absolutely interested in is Danny Lil Baby Teymur at 7,400. He is actually the older brother of David Teymur, but smaller weight class. So people all week you'll see him be called Lil Teymur, Baby Teymur. Taking on Julio Arce at 8,800. This fight to me screams recency bias from people. People saw Julio Arce against Dan Ige. Dan Ige's a grappler who, when he got hit, had no idea what the hell he was doing. Danny Teymur beat the ever-loving piss out of Danny Henry in the first round, and then Danny Henry gassed out. It reminded me of Antonio Carlos Jr. versus Daniel Kelly. He had nothing left. That's the concern with Teymur. For me, he's a better striker. He's a legit kickboxer, K1 kickboxer. I think his record's like 38-1, 38-2, somewhere in that ballpark. Like that. To stand on the feet, I think Julio Arce is going to have a problem. My concern is the gas tank of Danny Teymur, but at 7,400, I think of the underdogs, he is the most likely to win his fight. I like Danny Teymur a bunch in all formats. If I heard a noise from Chris, I'd be interested. Can you tell me a dog you're more confident in winning?
No, I hate agreeing with you so much on this card. It's kind of freaking me out. But
don't worry, I'm going to disagree strongly. That's okay.
All right, we'll go over there in a minute. But
I will say that you and I, then Chris, are in the Twitter minority. Julio Arce is the Twitter darling this week, and I hope Twitter burns.
I would love to see it. I'll roast some marshmallows with you. But I think that Arce he's obviously a good boxer. He throws in combination. He's got good footwork. The main thing I noticed about him that really gave me pause is that when guys come forward on him, he doesn't really know what to do. He freezes. He did that in his contender fight. That's how he lost his first round there. That's how, even though he came back to win, that's how I was kind of getting better of him in the first round of that fight. When he either decides that he has to come forward or gets enough confidence to come forward, that's when he puts his combinations together. That's when we can see all the slick boxing come to bear. But one thing we know is that little baby Teymur is going to try to put a ferocious pace on him. The problem, as Sean pointed out, is he might put a pace up that he himself can't keep. And that might, lead to some bad things. Although I will say in that Danny Henry fight, his gassing out, he was tired before that, but his gassing out coincided with him eating a couple of hard shots. So we'll have to see. You have to gauge for yourself how much that's related. But I digress a little bit. I think that Teymur is going to come forward on a ferocious pace. I think he's gonna freeze our boy there, and I think he's gonna get the finish here. I think he's gonna use his slick striking. He hits hard. Danny Henry no-sold it, but he does hit pretty hard. And I think he's gonna come out and get an early stop here. But if he doesn't, and he does gas out, and he does give the opponent space, and he does start to come forward, then we see the boxing take over. Then it's a different fight. But early, and the official pick is going to be Teymur.
Yeah, Danny Teymur, by the way, is moving from 155 to 145 for this fight. Joe, come to the rescue of the Twitter peeps. Why are we crazy?
First of all, 145 is his natural weight. He took the fight at 155, Teymur. Teymur has never, it's not recency bias for me, Teymur never makes it out of the first round. Now, you could say that that's because he always wins in the first round, but we don't know if this guy is not just a 5-minute fighter based on all his fights previously. Okay, that's one point. The only point I will concede is that this is a fight that's probably better to bet than it is to play on DraftKings. What we have in Arce is a Golden Gloves champion boxer with 3 submission wins. Trains with Jimmie Rivera. Okay, teammate of Jimmie Rivera. I can't recall a more impressive technical striking display by someone making their debut in the octagon than I saw with this fight. I think he survives the first round. He gets real technical with Teymur and gets a second or third round finish. His pricing is a little strange. It's kind of hard to fit him in cash. So he's more of a GPP play for me. And I also do it as my one and only straight bet on this card is on Arce to win.
See, I have a straight bet on Danny Teymur to win, but I got underdog odds when I thought this was a bit closer to a pick'em, which I still would have picked Teymur. But this will be an interesting one. I wonder if this will make her hot takes at the end of the episode. We will see. And no one should have a hot take on this fight. This is one where I'm pretty strong. If someone tells you they know for sure what's going to happen in this fight, I think they're lying to you. So we have Jake the Juggernaut Ellenberger, loser of 4 of his last 5 fights at 8,600, taking on Ben Killer B. Saunders, loser of 3 of his last 4 fights. I get Ellenberger has better competition. He also looked way worse at weigh-ins. Someone is going down in this fight. It's minus 290 to not go to a decision. I'm going to have all the exposure I can in GPPs and not touch it in cash. For me, this is one way or the other, and because of the pricing and Ellenberger, the way he looks and is older, Saunders just fits better. So I might have 2-1 Saunders to Ellenberger, but this screams GPP. Joe, I know you're entering 150 lineups with 75 each guy.
Probably not, but not entering 150. I agree with everything you said about this being a GPP fight. Let's take it one step further. Ellenberger is 2-7 in his last 9, right? The only reason he got that fight against Matt Brown is he actually flew to Vegas and pleaded with Dana White to actually give him one more shot. So he got the fight. He knocked out Matt Brown. It was a great fight. He has not looked good since. Saunders, on the other hand, has not looked great either. Saunders is a really cool guy. You know, he's like, I remember tweeting out, I'm going to put you on my DraftKings team. And he tweets back saying, it's my honor. So what a freaking cool guy. Him and Sam Alvey are both very cool dudes. Anyway, to get back to my main point, I don't know which way to go here. I think you could throw a dart. I don't think either guy is safe in cash. There's a small amount of odds value. If you look at the current betting line odds relative to the salary, there's a small amount of odds value in Ellenberger. But, there's a lot of love for Saunders out there. I'm listening to a lot of what the other pods are saying. There's a fair amount of love for Saunders. So I think he's got a distinct advantage if this goes to the ground. He's got some nice submissions. But I could also see Ellenberger just clocking him. So it's really hard to pick a side here, but I do agree that based on the large inside the distance line, that you should have one side or the other in GPPs, especially if you're playing multiple lineups.
Chris, you got the Killer Bee or the Juggernaut?
This is such a weird fight for me because when it first got announced, I was thinking, oh well, okay, I guess I have to pick Jake Ellenberger to win a fight. But then I saw on Twitter, I kind of had the opposite experience where I saw everybody loving Ellenberger, and that didn't seem right to me either. So then I kind of liked Saunders, and then I watched the fights. Ben Saunders is just, he likes to body kick and throw overhand rights. He stands up way too tall and doesn't retract enough after he throws it, which is why he was getting lit up by Alan Jouban in that fight. And I have to disagree amazingly with something that Joe said, which is Ellenberger has looked good since then. I was shocked going back and rewatching it how good he looked in that Mike Perry fight before he got knocked out. He was hitting very sharp counters on Perry.
But Perry leads with his chin, though. I mean, that's how Perry fights.
But it's still him looking good. I mean, and we are talking about Ben. I mean, we're not talking about a world of competition away here. I mean,
you gotta think though that I'm hoping Jake Ellenberger wakes up from that knockout in time to take this fight.
Yeah, I mean, look,
I know.
Perry leads with his chin, so I expected Ellenberger to get a few strikes in, but I don't know if I would make more of that than it is.
I was just impressed by. I mean, look, we all think of him as a shot fighter. I was just impressed. He seemed to come into that fight with a game plan. He was using his takedowns to disrupt rhythm. I don't know if he wants to do that here so much, based on Saunders' BJJ game, but he can still land a hard counter, even in the Jorge Masvidal fight, landed a couple hard counters. And Ben Saunders is just so straight up, and he's just going to throw that right hand. And I really think he's going to be open to a counter here. I really think he's going to be open to be hit hard. And based on, the damage that Saunders has taken in his last two fights, maybe he goes down a little quicker if he does get hit with a hard counter. I don't know. I can't believe I'm saying this in 2018, but I think I'm picking, Jake Ellenberger by stoppage.
Somebody's going to sleep in that fight. And probably in this fight, because we have Daniel, the Daddy Longlegs Spitz. Yeah, that's a real UFC fighter. He's at 6,900 taking on Walt, You Can't Trust Me, also known as the Big Ticket Harris, at 9,300. I had a lot of Walt Harris in his fight against Mark Godbeer, and he looked fantastic until he got himself disqualified, which...
What a pussy-ass disqualification that was, too.
Yeah, it was a low blow, and he was kind of in the process of throwing a high kick while the referee was stepping in. The referee was yelling time, but didn't get all the way in to stop him, and Harris then hit Godbeer with a high kick, and it resulted in a disqualification, which really hurt me that night quite a bit. Spitz, by the way, I believe he lost to Mark Godbeer.
He did.
And then knocked out Anthony Hamilton, which Don't get me started on that. Anthony Hamilton is basically my Nick Lentz. But for this fight, no. I mean, you could tweet me that ask me how much I'm betting on him, but you'll get a nasty response back. Walt Harris should win this fight. He should outbox Daniel Spitz. Spitz is, I mean, I guess he's a grappler, but the grappling technique and tape I've seen from him, he looks terrible. He can get a takedown. Walt Harris is 10-7 as a pro. His UFC wins over guys like Chase Sherman, Cyril Asker, and Cody East. He's lost to everybody else he's fought. He was gonna beat Mark Godbeer. It's hard. I would take Walt Harris. He's clearly better than Spitz, who's probably not a UFC caliber. At least Harris has talent. I'll probably have some shares of Spitz because it's a heavyweight fight. And you can't trust Walt Harris. I think I've rambled on enough because Walt Harris burned me so bad last time. Chris, who you got in this one?
I think you need to learn to heal and love again. And I think Walt Harris will show you the way. Listen.
In cash games?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In cash games? That's the big debate here.
I really think I like him everywhere. I get that it's a heavyweight fight, and I get that, he's Walt Harris. But Spitz is just ugh. I mean, he likes to use lateral movement. He's going to be the quicker guy here. I don't know what that says a whole lot. He knocked out Anthony Hamilton with a perfect counter shot. Fine. He doesn't hit jab otherwise. The wrestling is maybe a concern, but I expect Walt Harris to be considerably stronger. So I don't know how much that's going to play. And I like Walt Harris. I think he throws heat. He throws in combination. He throws body kicks. He throws head kicks. We even saw a little bit of wrestling in. Maybe he got the rub from Fabricio Verdum because we saw him take down Mark Godbeer and we saw him move to mount in that fight. Everything was beautiful before before this qualification. But I really just don't. And lest we forget in that Godbeer fight, Mark Spitz gassed horribly, just horribly. I can't believe he wasn't finished. I mean, I think that speaks more to Mark Godbeer than it does to anything else.
Wasn't that short notice, though? Wasn't that short notice?
Like a week short notice.
It was short notice, but, man, I mean, after the first round, he had nothing left. And his second fight lasted all of 5 seconds, so we don't really know what we have coming in here. I just don't expect much resistance at all. He holds his hands real low. He's going to be open to all sorts of crushing hammer strikes. I like Walt Harris by violence. I'm not afraid to say it.
Joe, you playing Walt Harris in cash?
Cash is tough with heavyweights. He actually fits in lineups that I'm making. I have not finalized my cash lineup.
Find 100 to get to Belal, please.
Yeah, there is a high element of risk. I agree. I definitely like him in GPPs. I think Spitz is a former football player, Division I football player. I know he's not a natural MMA fighter. I do think, even with that said, that Harris is probably the better athlete, at least when it comes to MMA. Again, I think he had Goodbeer finished. Goodbeer was looking for any way out. The DQ was a gift. Goodbeer should not be in the UFC. He got that miraculous, 4:59 in the third round tap out by the Russian, and then got a new 3 or 5 fight deal, which boggled my mind. Anyway, off topic. I do like Harris a fair amount in this fight, but heavyweights, anything can happen.
Moving on to the co-main event here, Gregor the Gift, Gillespie 9,500, Vinc from Hell, Pichel at 6,700. I posted on Twitter earlier this week, I'm picking Gregor Gillespie. I'm probably going to play him in cash. This is a fight, though, that is closer than people are thinking. People are thinking Gillespie's going to go and just steamroll him. Pichel, I get he couldn't stop takedowns against Rustab Khabilov. Since then, he's gotten his own takedowns. He hits really hard. He strikes moving backwards very well. That's how he knocked out Damian Brown. Gillespie's going to push the pace. We've seen him get hit before going in. He tends to get a little wild. Pichel is incredibly live to a knockout. I would not fade him. Have some in GPPs if you're making multiple lineups. That being said, Gillespie in the wrestling, he's a big favorite for a reason. Joe?
Look, I mean, I like Pichel, right? He was fairly fortunate to get that decision in his last fight. It could have gone either way. I think that, look, it was a coin flip decision, in my opinion, and I was on Pichel in that fight. I just think Gigi is going to have too much for him here. I mean, yes, he's a bit undersized for the weight division. However, he is a D1 wrestling stud. I like him in cash. I like him in GPPs. Cautionary tale, though, is even in decisions, if he gets 10 takedowns, he could still earn his salary, for GPPs. I think he's pretty much a lock for 10x in cash. Whether you're going to get 12x or not in GPPs, I think you need a fair amount of takedowns. I do like him a lot. I think he's worth paying up for. Get him into your lineups.
Chris?
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't call Vinc Pichel a complete fade, but I hear your point about Damian Brown, but I would say that Gillespie is a more responsible defensive boxer than Damian Brown. Damian Brown just sort of wing shots from the hip and got caught with a counter. Gillespie keeps a nice tight guard on the feet. I think he doesn't just rush in. We saw in that Jordan Rinaldi fight when he had him against the cage, he sort of waits to slip and then tries to get his offense going. So I'm not really worried about Pichel landing a nightmare counter on him. I admit the possibility that it can happen, but it's just not very high on my list of concerns. I like Gillespie to do what he does. I think he's got great takedowns. He's got incredible control once everybody's on the ground. Incredible transitions. I think, as the kids say, that Gregor Gillespie is the truth, and I think that I'm gonna have a lot of him here. I'm gonna be really, really light on Vinc Pichel. So if he ruins my night, so be it. But I really think Gregor Gillespie is about as safe as you can get here.
Moving on to our main event, it is Jimmie Rivera, 8,200, taking on Marlon Moraes at 8,000. I teased it at the start of the show. I really do not care for Marlon Moraes. I think what he did to get this fight, while it worked, it just made me hate him. It came off even worse than Colby Covington. Like, I could take the fight. On my terms, just fight. I hated what he pulled, but it worked in that now I want to see him get knocked out. And luckily he's fighting Jimmie Rivera, who I think is going to have a speed advantage. I think he can take down Marlon. I'm not worried about the game of Marlon. I don't think he's going to time a knee on Jimmie coming in. If it settles into a point fighting type of fight, that's where Marlon Moraes could have success. I just think Jimmie's going to do enough with his movement and pressure to keep that from happening. Over 5 rounds, I think Jimmie Rivera overwhelms him. I am considering the stack in cash because if it goes 5 rounds, Marlon in a striking match will score, okay for one of your losers and you lock in the win. But being how confident I feel in Jimmie Rivera, I'm not sure how that's going to land. I like Rivera a lot. Chris, who do you have?
I like Rivera a lot in general. I'm a big fan of his striking game. I like how he alternates body head. I like how aggressive he is. He throws in combination. I like how he alters the timing on his strikes. That's how he was catching. Who was the last? Thomas Almeida with straight right hands. But there is one glaring thing that makes me nervous here, and that is when Jimmie Rivera gets comfortable or when he gets in the pocket, he tends to firefight. And when he does that, he tends to swing wildly. And when he does that, he can get himself clipped. Thomas Almeida did it. I think Moraes can do it as well. I think Moraes is looking for those kind of opportunities. He likes to dart in with his own offense, and he also likes to let you come get him and counter-strike. It would not be outside the realm of possibility here for me to see Jimmie Rivera eating a hard counter and having that change the complexion of the fight. Having said that, though, I think Jimmie Rivera is the better put together fighter all around. The leg kicks, the wrestling game. And again, the praise that I heaped on him before for his striking. So I see Jimmie Rivera winning this fight for as long as he can resist the urge to get in the pocket and really try to swing. But if he does that, he's really taking his life in his hands, I feel.
Joe, how do you see our main event this week?
Okay, so the way to slow Jimmie Rivera down is the patented Team Alpha male eye poke nut shot that Uriah Faber actually worked on Jimmie Rivera.
Famous.
And yes, famous. And we all know that, Marias has got a penchant for the nut shot, as we saw in Norfolk against John Dodson. In any case, look, I would not like Jimmie nearly as much for DraftKings if he was 9K versus 8.2K, because I do see this as a stand-up points fight. I don't see a lot of things happening on the ground. I don't think, and again, the biggest debate around this fight in my eyes is whether it's stackable in cash. I personally think it's not, because I don't see the loser scoring a lot of points here. Jimmie Rivera has not scored over 100. I think in his 5 fights, his average is I think he's only scored more than 78 points once in his fight, and that was against Thomas Almeida, because he knocked him down a couple of times. So I think he's got a very safe floor, which makes him perfect for cash. And I think at 8.2K, he's good for GPP. So I'm picking a side in this fight. The side is Jimmie Rivera. I'll probably have a few shares of Moraes at 8K. But I do not think this fight is eminently stackable unless you're okay with 100 points or less and think that the pay line for cash is going to be 350 or less. I don't necessarily believe that for this card, but I am picking Jimmie.
All right, that's it for our 13 fights, but we have one very important thing left. It is our hot takes, which actually haven't been doing too badly. So we'll start off with Joe this week. What do you got for me for a hot take?
Okay, so the hot take is play one lineup with Harris, Ellenberger, and Eubanks. That's my hot take. Play one lineup for GPPs with those three. I'm not going to tell you how to fill out the rest of the lineup, but don't be surprised if you get 3 finishes with that lineup.
All right, 3 finishes in those fights.
At all, actually.
That's pretty hot take, though. How about you, Chris?
How about this is going to be a good day for brothers and a bad day for debutantes. I like the Teymur brothers to win both their fights, and I think our 2 prospects, that being Wood and Rencountre, are going to lose possibly in spectacular fashion.
One of those is a pretty big favorite as well. That is, I like this, coming back strong with an actual hot take. I respect that.
By the way, was that a procedure that actually Chris went through? I thought that was a euphemism for him seeing his beard waxer.
Oh no. This is my convalescence beard. It's nice and full, and
okay.
once I get all the way back to health, it's gonna go away. You'll see.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a little while ago, I called a ton of subs on a card. Yep. I'm gonna go the other way.
Knockouts.
I think on this card we are gonna see at least 9 knockouts.
What?
I'm gonna go 9 out of 13.
And
I'm thinking we're gonna get 9. I think we're gonna get. I'm taking a couple risks, but I think I'm pretty safe in the Harris Spitz fight, Ellenberger Saunders, Arce Teymur, Alvey Villante. I think Muhammad's gonna finish for Rencountre. Desmond Green on the chin of Gleison Tibau. Wood Eduardo likely to end in a finish.
Yeah.
I think Jose Torres, Jared Brooks could end in a knockout. I think the main event, 5 rounds, could end in a knockout. Gillespie could finish Vinc Pichel or vice versa. I think a lot of these fights outside of the 2 women's fights are live to knockout. So that'll be my hot take. I think it's going to be a really high scoring week, which would, as Joe, to bring it back to our DFS focus, stacking in cash, that could be a little risky if people are going to be putting up finishes
9 knockouts, no way you're going to see a 350 pay line in cash.
Exactly. So it is a hot take, but I think we're going to see a lot of finishes. Guys, you got anything else for this UFC Utica card?
No, man. Let's do it. Early. Remember, Friday. Don't think this is on Saturday. Friday. Right. So Friday at 6:30, baby.
Lineups lock at 6:30. Make sure you're going over to rotowire.com/free. Get all that great free content. Good luck in your contest. We will see you next week. I believe next week are we finally at UFC 225?
Yes.
Is that next week?
Chicago.
I'm going to, you know what? I in advance, I'm going to make my hot take for next week.
Oh, boy.
Next week, when my hot take will be CM Punk gets a first-round knockout.
Oh, Jesus. All right.
That's how we end it, guys. We will see you next week.
Howdy.
Later.
Later.